What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you part 4 of our Story of Baldur's Gate series. In part 3, we discovered exactly what Sarevok's plans were for Baldur's Gate, or at least that he intends to ascend to the title of Grand Duke, after having you framed for murder. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into this here. First things first, as we start this act and you head back to the city of Baldur's Gate, which is our primary objective here, remember, you are wanted for murder, which means the Flaming Fist very much so want to imprison you. Now, it is possible to fight and kill the Flaming Fist guys here. However, doing so will typically cause you a huge hit to your reputation, which is a problem for some classes more than others, but in general, it's a bad idea. Now, as you're walking around Baldur's Gate, you might get stopped and caught by the Flaming Fist, or at least the first time you run into them, at which point you'll be given a mock trial by Angelo, who has apparently taken over since Scar has been murdered, which we'll talk more about here in a minute. Now, Angelo, typically speaking, sentences you to prison. Now, it is possible to have a companion in your party named Chartil, who is actually Angelo's daughter, and he will set you free if she's with you. But if not, we have to escape the prison by either attacking or solving a riddle from a guy in prison as well, named Neb. Now, after we escape this, it's important to note that for the most part after this, all of the Flaming Fist will just be hostile. They won't try to arrest you again. They'll just try to kill you. So it's usually better to just walk away from them. But with that out of the way, let's actually talk about some other stuff. The first place I usually like to start with this is the eastern portion of the city where the Sorceress Sundry's shop is. Now this is typically because you can get all of the quest leads started pretty much right in that one section. However, I do want to mention that Chapter 7 has a lot of variations. There's only a couple things you really need to do, but there's a lot of variations on it that can kind of change little things here and there. So keep in mind, the order in which I'm going to tell you these things isn't necessarily the order it would actually happen for you, if some of it even happens at all. But in this area, we can run into a few people. First and foremost, we can run into Tomoko. She is usually right in front of Sorceress Sundry's, and she will explain a few things, but most importantly, she'll tell us that Duke Elton, who actually sent us to Candlekeep earlier in the first place, has since fallen mysteriously ill, and his healer is probably the one responsible for it, and she urges you to check that out at the Flaming Fist headquarters, where she says she will meet you out front. Also in this area, we can run into Delthir. Delthir is a member of the Harp, and he will explain that most people at this point think that you and your party have been working for the nation of Om this entire time, because everyone thinks war with Om is imminent, that Om is gearing up for war. He tells us that Scar was assassinated, and it would seem the Shadow Thieves, who reside in Om, are apparently to blame, though the circumstances are incredibly suspicious as well. Now, from here, if we head back to the Flaming Fist headquarters, we can meet Tomoko out front, who will give us a bunch of information. She will ask you to defeat Sarevok, but not to kill him, because she was apparently Sarevok's lover at one point. Moreover, she'll tell us a bit of a bombshell of information, and that is that Sarevok is actually our half-brother because he himself is Bald Spawn as well. And that Sarevok isn't just trying to take over the Iron Throne and ascend to the title of Grand Duke. He's actually trying to start a war with Om altogether, which we'll talk a little bit more about here shortly. And then lastly, Tomoko will ask us to kill Scythandria, which is apparently another of Sarevok's lovers, and Tomoko wants her dead because apparently Scythandria is very much so trying to get Sarevok to ascend to whatever he is, whereas Tomoko wants him to stay human, and moreover with her. Basically wants him to not die. But she will also tell us that Scythandria is at the Iron Throne headquarters as well. There's also numerous places we can learn that information, as every other time you turn around, someone's like Iron Throne headquarters in this chapter. Now, since we are right in front of the Flaming Fist headquarters, now is as good a time as any to check on Duke Elton. So once we walk in, we'll immediately be set upon by basically all the Flaming Fist. For the most part, the Flaming Fist in this building should be okay to kill without taking a hit to your reputation, but you might want to keep an eye on it. And we need to get upstairs to talk to Duke Elton, where he was and where we spoke to him previously. Now, we'll actually run into his healer, Rashad, who upon the slightest bit of questioning turns into a doppelganger and tries to kill us. At this point, Elton will ask us for our assistance in getting him to the Harbor Master, which is a trusted friend where Duke Elton can recover. And I suggest we do just that. We can take Duke Elton to the Harbor Master, which is in the same district as the Iron Throne, which is a great place to go check out that tower. Now, we get a ton of information from a bunch of NPCs that stop and talk to us on every floor, very similarly to the last time we were here. They will tell us that Sarevok has basically tossed the Iron Throne aside now that he plans on becoming Grand Duke and has effectively taken over the Flaming Fist. He's basically done with the Iron Throne and has bled them dry. We also learn that Sarevok will be named the Grand Duke soon, and is actively encouraging a war with Alm. This is important because we also garner from these conversations that just accusing Sarevok at this point isn't enough. We need to actually find proof of what Sarevok is trying to do here, and that is that he's trying to start this war with Alm. So we need to gather proof and then head to the Ducal Palace, basically, where the inauguration for Sarevok is taking place. Now, at the very top of the Iron Throne Tower, we will run into Sathandria, actually, and once she is dead, she will have letters on her confirming that Sarevok actually hired assassins to kill one of the Grand Dukes as well as start to target the other two, thus giving him complete control over Baldur's Gate, if it were successful. We can also pick up Sarevok's diary, which will explain much of what we already know at this point, that he's Ballspawn, that we're Ballspawn, that he's doing all these nefarious deeds, but we want to keep the diary on us if nothing else. Now, Sathandria, as well as Tomoko earlier, will actually also point us to a place called the Undercellar, where apparently the assassins that were sent to kill one of the dukes are actually being holed up at. Now, this is pretty straightforward. We just go to the Undercellar, there's a short conversation, we kill them, we pick up the letters from their body, which provide us proof that Sarevok hired assassins to kill some of the Grand Dukes. Moreover, they also have an invitation to the Ducal Palace for the inauguration of Sarevok as well. Now, in addition to this, it is also possible to make contact with the Shadow Thieves here as well, the ones that were framed for Scar's murder, and they can potentially help you out here shortly to come as well. But there is a little quest there as well. It's not wholly necessary for the chapter, though. But at this point, we should have several forms of proof of Sarevok's deeds, as well as an invitation to the Ducal Palace, which is in the northernmost section of Baldur's Gate. Once we get there, we will have to present our invitations to the doorman, who will then allow us in. Now, at this point, once we walk into the inauguration room, there's a lot of people talking, and two of the Grand Dukes that are still alive are in the process of raising Sarevok to the title of Grand Duke. Sarevok announces his war against Alm as well as taking over the Flaming Fist. However, he then shortly thereafter attempts to have both of the Grand Dukes in the room assassinated because a lot of the noble people here are actually doppelgangers in disguise. This is actually a pretty important part of the story because if these doppelgangers succeed in killing the two Grand Dukes, it's game over. If you save the Dukes but then don't have any evidence of what Sarevok has actually done, i.e. his diary or his letters to the assassins, then you will be sentenced to death right here and die. So once you get to this point in the story, it's important that we both have the proof of what Sarevok has done, as well as save the Grand Dukes in this fight. Once Sarevok's plan falls apart right in front of him, he attacks you, but one of his mage friends pops in and teleports him elsewhere. The Grand Dukes use a spell of sorts to track his movements, and they tell you that he was actually teleported to the Thieves Guild nearby. We'll be teleported to follow Sarevok, actually, at which point we'll find ourselves in the Thieves Guild, and the thieves therein will actually point us in the direction that Sarevok went. Now, this requires us to go through a maze just below the Thieves Guild. The maze itself is pretty straightforward, it's pretty linear, and because of the camera angle, mazes aren't exactly the most difficult thing to figure out here. The maze itself is filled with quite a few tough enemies, especially on higher difficulties, and a bunch of traps as well. Moreover, at the end of the maze, right before we get to where we need to go, we'll run into a man named Winsky. Winsky is important because he tells us exactly what it is Sarevok is trying to do here. Sarevok isn't just starting a war with Alm just to start one. Sarevok is doing this because he hopes to basically cause death on such a mass scale that it awakens his child of Ball blood, thus allowing Sarevok to potentially ascend to godhood that way. That's what Sarevok is actually trying to do. And it would appear this Winsky fellow was a mentor to Sarevok and helped him learn a lot of the magic rituals and things that Sarevok has needed along the way. Now, once we walk through this door, we'll find ourselves very close to the end of the game. So potentially you're supposed to be able to sleep right here and get one last dream. I couldn't get it to actually show up, so sorry about that. But just know there is actually one more dream that's supposed to take place in Chapter 7 here. Now, as we walk up the road a little bit, we will run into Iron Throne bounty hunters who are here to collect on Sarevok's head for what he did to the Iron Throne, but they turn on you quickly as well because the Iron Throne also still hates you despite, everything you did because of Sarevok. A little farther up the road still, we will run into Tomoko yet again. Now, this can go one of two ways. She will have to fight you because Sarevok has learned of her treachery and won't have anything to do with her otherwise. But it is possible to talk your way out of this situation if you killed Scythandria for her, as well as have a high enough, I believe, charisma to pass the invisible speech checks, if you will. Technically, it's called like an NPC reaction, but you get the gist. It's possible to talk your way out of this fight with Tomoko if circumstances are met, or you'll be forced to kill her, and then we can enter the big temple, the Temple of Bal. This is where we will confront Sarevok. Now, this can be a tough fight for a variety of reasons. On every difficulty, there's a way to get through it, and chances are if you've gotten to Sarevok, you'll probably be fine getting through him. Now, once he goes down, that's the end of this chapter, as well as the main campaign for the game. We are then treated to a cinematic where we are shown Sarevok's essence leaving his body and then returning to a statuette apparently somewhere. And then it pans out to reveal that there are hundreds, potentially even thousands of these statues that would imply all of them are Bal spawn, which I think is meant to give you the idea that this is what happened just between the two of you. Can you imagine all the chaos being bred by the spawn of Bal? But that's going to do it for today and part 4, guys. So there you are. There is part 4 of our Story of Baldur's Gate series, which is technically the ending of the main game, but I'm going to have one more video covering Siege of Dragonspear, since that is technically officially part of the game as well. So with those things out of the way, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.